The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity-centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success, with thought-provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel. Welcome, friends, to this episode of the HX Collective podcast, where we are in for another treat with a fantastic guest. And I have to tell you, today's guest is deeply personal for me. Sometimes when I have people participate in this podcast, it's because I admire their work from afar, or I've been inspired by something they've said or done, or someone has introduced them to me because of their shared desire to elevate human flourishing. And it's quite another thing when the person I'm interviewing today has actually been a substantive input to the transformation in my own personal life. Joy, Ready Johannes, is one of the most impactful transformational thought leaders and coaches, and has spent the last 25 years helping human beings find their authentic, meaningful possibilities and God-given purposes. And it's very befitting that Joy is doing the work as an executive coach and counsel and advisor and facilitator, in large part because her maiden name is Joy Ready. I mean, how prophetic is this, that her maiden name is put her in the space to explore what it means to be radically ready to change our worlds. Radically ready to change our worlds, whether our worlds are big in the space of executive and business interest, or whether we're doing that on an individual level where we're ready to have a different experience of what it means to live and flourish. So with that, I welcome you to introduce you to my great friend, my great mentor and coach and advisor, Joy Johannes. Hello, hello.
Hello. Welcome, everybody.
It's so fun. I mean, this in so many ways, as we were preparing for today's conversation, it was like, I basically feel like we're just putting a microphone on, like letting people eavesdrop into one of our just like transformational conversations. Like every time we talk, whether there's just a simple desire to catch up and get reconnected, or there's some sort of meaningful, the need for change, I find that there is a through line in all of the work and impact that you're having. And while we're going to include details around your bio, how people can get connected to you through your website and really find you, I want us to start our conversation, Joy, if you can, putting some context around the history of your work and where that brings us to present day, in the mission where you are really looking to engage people who are radically ready to change their world. I sometimes say the world, and you're so quick to remind me, no, Deb, I mean, the world is really their world, whatever that world means. So tell us a little bit about you and how it brings us to present day in the work, and how you're being a catalyst for amazing change.
Sure. I actually met this work probably, 25, 30 years ago. And that's how I met Deb, actually. It was through her husband's friend. And we kind of agreed to take this class. And I'm going to just start there. So in that class, how you are in that class is how you are in life. And I realized in that class that I had thrown a birthday party for a friend that came, and I didn't get my homework done. And when you didn't get your homework done, the whole class suffered. And they were teaching us how our impact changes the world. And I sat in that class and I started bawling. And I said, this is how I am in life. I go take care of other people. I do things for people that have never asked me to do it, and go ahead and do it because I think they need it, to my own detriment, to my own financial, physical, emotional relationship. And ever since then, and then I just shifted. I just made a choice and I shifted, and I love this work. So what happened was I was a fashion designer for 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days, and that was done. I was like, I don't want to do this when I get old. And I started like an inner city children's ministry, and it grew from 30 families to 3,000, and eventually did humanitarian aid all over the world. I've worked in 18 countries and changed the world globally, actually. And so it's been a fun, great life. But everywhere I went along the path, I brought transformation. I brought those conversations, and I helped people break through. So it wasn't just about the task of ending hunger in North Africa in 2000. It was about the people I was around and leaving them in possibility in the world. So that's kind of my background.
Well, and it is such I mean, there's so much to unpack, and I know that how all of those journeys, nothing in your life is ever not, sort of appointed, and the almost the completely the divine nature of
Yes.
how all of these experiences are coming knit together. And I'm curious what it feels like to consistently be in this space of human beings interacting, with the reality of the world and then something much greater. You use the word possibilities, and I think, anyone listening today, when you start to think about how you live in the present and
Mhm.
how that how we can, manifest or impact what could be different in the future, and how that ties into a much bigger purpose, or a much bigger sense of meaning in the world. What's that
Yes.
like? I mean, to be there constantly, and I mean, to know joy is to know, like, there's no such thing as just going to a grocery store. Okay, there's no like menial task. Hey, I'm gonna go get my car washed today. Everywhere you go, you are like appointed in that moment to create a moment for someone to have a new possibility or to see something they didn't see. Like, what is that like? Please don't say exhausting. Please don't say exhausting.
No, it is, every time you talk to somebody and they have a shift, you're changing the world, and my passion is helping people. And my husband's a bodybuilder. We went to Mr. Olympia a couple weeks ago, and one of the bodybuilders at the meet and greet broke down. And I said, "You got 15 minutes?" And he goes, "Sure." And I go, "You want a breakthrough?" And I took 15 minutes, did a transformational thing, and he walked away totally changed, ready for Mr. Olympia. It was so cool. And then, of course, I go, "Oh my gosh, I gotta tell my." So whether I'm in the desert in Somalia, I'm still doing that with the Somali people I'm around. And so I love it. It has been my like fill my cup, because when people can see possibility, and even when I worked in government, and I'm very much one of those people where I'm black and white, right or wrong. And I get right and justified, and I know this is right, and I'm going to put the stake in the ground. But when you realize, okay, yes, I have a stake, but so do you. And when you both say yes, yes, we both have the right idea, but let's come together in the middle and see what's possible now. It changes businesses.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's a great transition. So the nature of what you're doing right now, and I should mention we're filming this right now in November of 2025, and this will be released early in 2026. So just to put some context around what may
Yes.
be informing our discussions today based on where we are in the present day of the world. But
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what you're doing with this idea of radically ready to change their world. Tell us about the current work. I know your podcast and the opportunity to just be inspired by people who heeded the call of possibility. And a lot of times in the space of great suffering, tell us a little bit about the context. And then I want to talk about this idea of what you just said, like the stake in the ground and the willingness to consider others, because I think it's pretty trite in our world when people are like, oh, find the win-win. And it's all about, finding the mutuality and win-win. I think you've got a really creative and sort of breakthrough idea about what does that actually mean to the yes, yes, which is what you just said. But
Yes.
let's step back. Talk to us about what you're doing right now, and what's the mission of the work you're up to right now with Radically Ready to Change Their World? Tell us about that.
Right. So, two different things mainly. So, my vision right now and for my company is to create a community of people that are radically ready to change their world. And we do that by I always say it this way, but pulling out greatness in people. Because Nelson Mandela said it, we all have greatness, and finding that purpose and finding that you can have a 10 out of 10 in every area of your life. It's just a matter if you're ready. It's a matter if you want to go past that fear, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired with that one area that's not working, right? And so I'm putting together a membership so people can be in the conversation. You can share, not share. But what I'm finding now, especially with the new generation that's coming up, is that they want community. They want that togetherness. And I love the fact that you can be part of a community and not necessarily speak in it, but you can still glean from it.
Yeah.
You can still like look at it in the morning real quick and get your little tidbit for the day. And then in additionally, I'm a transformational life coach and a transformational leadership coach. So what I found was as that many of the people that I work with are also leaders. And so how can you lead in such a way that when you have one transformation personally, your everything changes in your life. That one shift changes your marriage, changes your relationships, changes your family, changes how you go to the grocery store. Like you said, it changes your whole work environment because you made that shift.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I'm coaching. I open the opportunity for you guys to just call and, get in touch with me and I'll do a 10-minute call with you, see where you're at and see if I can help. So that's what I'm up to.
I love it. Well, it's a great then transition to talk about some of the tenets that underpin the way that you bring community together, the conversations you're facilitating, and then how you kind of show up for people one on one. And one of my favorite things that, when I think about, first of all, the word transformation, I'm confident there are a few folks that are probably in the like, eye roll, like, oh,
Yeah,
transformation, and the reality is like when we talk about transformation, it's like, like real change. Like there is a sense of like a state of being that no
right.
longer serves to create space for what's possible, which could be another experience of flourishing. And so one of the theses, that's the plural thesis, that I know you've got this really strong reimagination of what it means in the spirit of context, like how I can grow or transform in a way
Mhm.
that does produce outcomes for
Yeah.
win-win. So it's not transformation in the name where I win and everyone else loses, or I
Mhm.
win and everyone else has to sacrifice and suffer, but this idea of win-win. Tell us a little bit about that, and then I want to talk about what that means, and like what outcomes happen if people are willing to reimagine what the win-win is.
Sure. I think I'm going to tie into something else real quick, if you don't mind either,
Mm.
because people need to be ready. You know, you can be stuck. We were all stuck in different parts of our life, everybody. And there's just that one area or two areas where, excuse me, if my work's good, my relationship's good, but, I have a child that is a teenager or whatever that is. I've seen that so much lately. And so there were little keys of teaching, and I'll give you one right now. And many of you have probably heard this, but you could in a statement, you say, "Well, I need to go across town right now, but dot dot dot. I can't because," and if you just change that word from but to and, there's a shift. And now all of a sudden, it's not a negative, it's not a stopping, but instead it's a and I got to figure it out. Right? And so there are these little tiny things that I teach. Sometimes it's mindset. And if it's mindset, there are certain books, there are certain, the other thing that I teach a lot too is how to have healthy relationships. You have communication and you have 6 ways that the other person is hearing what you're saying. And so, how to do that in a way that opens them up and opens you up to have success in that conversation. So there's the little drop the mics that are going to be an instant shift, and then there's the, oh, okay, I need to put some work on this and I need to change my stinking thinking, or I need to choose. And I'm a big advocate of choosing powerfully. You have the information now, you get to choose, and you don't have to choose to change. You can stay exactly like you are, and that's okay too. But now you have the opportunity. Now you have the insight of that thing that pops up. And when it pops up, you go, oh, okay. Do I want to stay like this or do I want something different?
So knowing some of those real practical techniques, and I love that you highlighted what happens when you replace the word but with and. That is like such an important takeaway for our listeners today. Really examine when you use the transition word but
Yeah.
versus and see how much more empowered and like energizing it is to choose
Yeah.
powerfully, as you're saying. When I think about the subject of the win-win and I look even at our present day, I think there's a lot of folks right now that think it's all about boundaries. It's all about myself. Like, I got to take care of me, and it's self care. And in
Yes.
that sense of, I'm going to claw back what I want and I need. And we have this like false idea that that is, for ourself and to heck with everything else around us. And when we think about the subject of human flourishing, and when you think about when people have real transformation, rarely is this a solo sport. Rarely is it like I now succeed and win without having some effect, positive or negative, on others. Tell what when you think of the construct of win-win, what does that mean in transformation? And then as we think about the outcomes that people have when they move from just that self-orientation to that self in the context of community and connection, say a little bit about what that means and what that can look like.
I want to start with you had asked about the win win. I recently took a class, and in the class, there was a lifeboat, and only 6 people could make the lifeboat. And there were many, many people on the ship. And what we had to do was look at ourselves and look at who we would choose for the lifeboat. And I think we can do that in our own lives. Who is, and they said, okay, rank it between 1 and 4. A 1 is I don't know you. I don't know your name. I don't care. A 2 is I know you a little bit, but I still don't know a lot. Number 3 is yes, you're valuable to me. And number 4 is you are in my inner circle. And what we did is we had to explain to people why they were not in our boat. And when the person was there in front of us looking face to face, in the video, we had to say, "You're a 1." They told us to instruct us to do a 1, and we had to say, "You're a 1, and I don't care enough about you to even remember your name."
Oh,
And I'm telling you what, that blew my world because we do that all the time. And so what we took on as a challenge of a group of us is to be a 4 for everybody. I love you, you're valuable, you're important, I see you, and I wanna hear what you have to say. And just think about doing that in your life alone, and that's the context, okay? And people, especially married couples, we have that little root of bitterness, we have the resentment, we have and if we don't clean that up daily, that's just gonna snowball. We have that in business too, where you work. It's like, "Oh, and we have this story about this other person." But if we didn't have that and we cleaned up our conversation every day, "Hey, I said this, and you might have taken it the wrong way. This was my intent. I'm sorry if I did that. Would you forgive me?" And then make them say, "Yes, I forgive you," or "No, I don't." Actually have that, then you move forward into a really amazing place because you're not dragging the past baggage.
yeah.
My husband and I do this thing where we go along in life and then we just you kind of feel it. You can do it in business too, but or in your family, especially like your brothers and sisters and you're grown and you're still like you're 12 years old. And we sit and we say, "I just want to know how I'm doing. How am I doing with you? Am I doing things that bother you? Is there anything that I need to clean up that?" And then he does it, and it's beautiful, and then all of a sudden, we have this new relationship again. We have possibility again. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so when you're describing that, well, first of all, what an exercise to have to tell a person that you're a 1, and I don't want you in my life because I don't even care enough about you to remember your name, and then what would have to be true if
yeah.
you were a 4 for others and you created space for people to be a 4 for you. That's when I think about the win-win. It's the mutuality of a great desire that we live in a space where we have the level of intimacy and connection where we are a 4 and we create capacities for people to be 4s in our life. I think there's a lot of I'm getting a lot of imagery around that. And that's a little nugget that I'm going to definitely think about over the weekend. I think the other piece, though, in this a really practical way, is the willingness to keep renewing.
Yes.
And I think when I look at the concept, even when people talk about like consensus building, we think of win-win almost like an end state. And what I love about your work and your coaching, and certainly what it has done for me, is it's this concept of it's not an end to go to the win-win. There's a renewing because in any quality relationship, in any aspect of our life, if we're not willing to hold the space like you're describing, to have those meaningful exchanges, to create space to receive feedback, to be willing to make yourself vulnerable and to care enough about the other person's well-being that you would be willing to have
Mhm.
that mutuality of exchange so that we clear up, we clean up, and then we get the next renewal cycle of the next win-win. I think there's a lot of impact around that. And so I want listeners to be able to have some of those like concrete nuggets to take away, that could be a really meaningful consideration in any scenario of your life. And in some cases, and I think as you build the habit, what you may find is that over time, those checkpoints, they don't reveal like these big, deep, dark secrets that you've been, I've been mad at you now for, 90 days or whatever, or last 3 years of our marriage, that you can start to build the habit. Those renewal cycles really become a piece and part of your transformation journey because you're not saving up or holding on to things in a way that get in the way. I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more, about what you're seeing when you think about people you're coaching or the communities in which you're serving who really adopt this mindset of the win-win and what it looks like, when people practice conversation differently or they practice communication differently. What are some of the things that you observe that lead to a person's experience, their flourishing in their experience?
I think I call it fearlessness, but when you're nervous about having that conversation or you're nervous about making a change in your life or your business, like I'm even thinking, I want to skip back for a second to the 4 to 4. Think about negotiations in business. And if you had a 4 to 4, if you chose powerfully for the other person being a 4 and you hearing and listening what they're saying, and then having that negotiation be from that powerful place, how much it wouldn't be a power struggle anymore.
Yeah.
It would just simply be a conversation. And the other thing, as you were talking, if you think about people in your life that really there's very few people that do this, but that they sit in a conversation with you and they look in your eyes and they're totally present to everything you're saying, and they're not waiting to speak and they're not having something else in their head going on. Those people are so powerful because all they do, they're a 4. You're being a 4 to them. And so just that simple thing, not interrupting in the middle of conversation, those type things, that in itself, just that listening piece impacts everything around you because now people feel heard and seen and valued. And that's something that, like you said, I think is the opposite to the way our world is right now because it's me, 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 me. But to be fully present is impactful.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
uh, go
well, so I'm going to pick up on that because, when I think about almost being countercultural,
Mhm, mhm.
listening, the posture of listening,
Yeah,
seeking to understand before you're understood, that selflessness that is an
yes.
act of service to other people, that doesn't just happen. There has to be some transformation, some shift. And as inherent in the work of, building a community of people who are radically ready to change their world, I want to emphasize or talk now a little bit about ready and readiness. And, when you look at what gets in the way of a human being's transformation readiness, what can you share that you observe that may make us kind of
Sure.
look inward and maybe reflect on our own starting points or state of being?
So what we did is we took the word in my branding, we took the word ready. And this is really the true core of being ready. Means you're real. You show up authentically. No more pretending, no more reasons and excuses. Number two, you're engaged in communication with yourself about what's real, with others, and with God, with whoever your God is, right? Number three, action oriented. I'm willing to do the work. Whatever it is, I'm willing to do it. Number four, the D is do. Do what matters. Do it with integrity. And then lastly is the why, and that's you. You're created on purpose for purpose. So that's how you get radically ready. You show up authentically, you're real in your conversation with yourself. You're open to miracles, you're open to the faith, you're action oriented, and you're going to do the work.
So, Joy, I love, first of all, I love that ready actually means something, where each of the letters of the word ready and the concept of being real and engaged and action oriented and the doing and the you are made for a purpose with purpose. I know that a big barrier for that level of being ready is often what's going on in our heads and the stories and the narratives that we tell ourselves that actually thwart our access to new possibilities. They thwart our ability to have the win-wins. So from your experience, what is it about these stories? What is getting in our way? Like, what do we need to examine so that we create space and room for actual readiness?
Yeah, it's twofold. A lot of the stories are around fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of looking bad, not looking good, fear of not being right, being wrong, being criticized. And then there's also like being shame based. The difference in many of our families are this way, where I did something wrong and guilt is I did something wrong but I'm a great person, but I did something wrong. And shame is I did something wrong and I'm a horrible person. I'm a bad person. I should have never done that. And you just heap it on yourself. And so understanding that difference and then moving and growing out of that into something else. The stories, what I do with my clients is we walk back in their life and it every single time it is around 5 years old. And that's when we created the story that we're continuing to live in our life. So as a 5 year old, we said, this is how life is. And it was something really simple. And what I do is I walk clients back through their life to that point and show them this is what's holding you back. It sounds simple, but I'll give you an example. Mine, I'm not going to tell you my story, but what stopped me in life was I don't know why people don't like me. And it was in kindergarten. And so I got stuck by being unsure. Let me go check with everybody. I want to do this, and I did big things in life, but I was always like second guessing. And then secondly, I was a people pleaser because I wanted everybody to like me all the time. And it doesn't work like that when you're a leader.
Yeah.
It's a horrible like grid to be locked in. And so I want to share one really quick story. I was in a class, just to give you an example of story. I was in a class, the teacher's teaching at the front, two people in the back are the main assistants, and then volunteers. And one of the two people in the back left and said, Joy, can you sit in this chair right here and be there for the teacher? And so I was really stoked. There was a couple hundred people in the class. And there was this guy in the class that I could not stand. He was arrogant. He told everybody he was better than everybody else. He was, I've done this. I'm blah, blah, blah. And that man stands up and he walks over and he had the gall to sit in that other chair,
Wow.
which meaning nobody asked him to do that. Nobody appointed him. And it was a pretty serious, intense class. So I had this big story about him. And then when the two people in the back came and replaced us, I stepped outside and my coach said, well, what happened? And so I told her this big story about this guy and he was never invited. And she said, what happened? And I told her the story again with all the emotion. And she said, what really happened? And I said, a man got up, walked across the room and sat in a chair. That's what happened. So that gives you an idea of the stories we create around something simple that happens.
I love it. I love it. So what I take away from that, and again, and what I'd want people listening to take away is that, you know, a lot of times the thing that's getting in the way of our readiness is our ability to separate facts, like what
Yes.
actually happens, and then everything else that we add around meaning, intention, purpose, personality. And I think it's such an important realization that here in that moment you were feeling so much enjoyment and like
Mhm.
honored and feeling, you know, good about yourself, and then somebody that you had this idea about who he was, he takes an action, and suddenly all the meaning that you attach to it, like, you know, he's trying to usurp my authority, he's trying to steal the spotlight, he's trying to power up on me, like all those things that we tell ourselves. I remember years ago somebody said we all have master's degrees from MSU, and he said it's making stuff up. You know, there's what is, and then there's everything else that we make up about it. And what I know in my work with you too is how impactful it has been for you to really help me separate the truth of like what is actually happening and then what is everything else that I'm saying about that what's happening in a way
Right,
that may be getting in my way. So again, I
right,
think there's a lot of practicality when we think about getting ready for transformation, and in the stories that we tell ourselves and how those can ultimately be our biggest barrier to getting real, to being open to engage, to take actions, you know, to be able to be in the mindset of a do
yeah,
whatever it takes, and to see ourselves, you know, you are created for a great purpose. You're made with purpose and created for a purpose.
mm,
So, this podcast and this whole community, of course, what brings us together is this uniting in our desire to bring action to human flourishing, to bring activity and insight and encouragement to elevate what it means to flourish as a human being. And in addition to the ingredients of readiness, tell us what you think are some of the ways that if I was ready to take a meaningful change and I wanted to step up and step in, you know, what is needed for us to activate our capacity to change our worlds and to do the, you know, to be ready to change whatever it is that we're trying to change, whether it's big or small. What are some of the essential things that we need to be focusing on, or what could we do next if we were looking to take some action?
sure. I would share these 7 steps. Number 1, you have to be intuitive. You have to look inside. If you're not willing to look at yourself, you're never gonna change. You're not, number 2 would be to look at why you're being stopped, why you're being triggered, what's happening. Be aware, right? Number 3 is identify really what's going on in that moment. And then number 4 would be, what if that wasn't true? What if that really wasn't true? What if that's my thinking, right? And then if that isn't true, what does that look like for me? What does that world look like for me? And then the last one is create the possibility.
Yeah.
Just give up whatever it was for you. I give up fear and I'm going to choose to live in possibility. Or I'm going to give up being angry and I'm going to choose to communicate. It's that simple.
I love the simplicity of these things. And when you examine those 7 steps, where do you think people get stopped? Where, you know, to get to that end game of that engagement and choosing possibility, what do we need to examine first? If you were to say
Yeah.
observationally, where's the breakdown?
I think 2. Number 1 is in being intuitive, being really honest with yourself because we make reasons and excuses to protect ourselves. So really taking a hard look at yourself. And the second one would be around what is really stopping you. And a lot of times it's around either yourself not being heard, seen, valued, they don't understand what I'm trying to say, or it's around a power struggle. It's around, I'm right, you're not, and around the resentment that comes with conflict, right? So if the resentment's gone, you can create something else.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Well, I know that one of the big parts of your work is gathering stories of people who've had, you know, meaningful shifts in their life and what has occurred for them and what has been made possible as they've walked the 7 steps that you're describing, and they're now living in those possibilities. Can you give us some examples of what is, how, if, no matter where our starting point is, if
Yep.
somebody's listening today and they're like, yeah, Joy, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've got no financial contribution to my family, and I'm sort of stuck in a space where, my whole identity is being a homemaker and taking care of my children. How am I going to have any impact on the
Yeah.
world? Or other people, I know a lot of people are listening, they're professionals, they're people who are extremely committed to client service and billable work, and this idea of having time for change. It's like, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? I got to get these deliverables out the door because my clients are paying me. Or maybe there are people listening today that are kind of in that executive realm where they're running a big business and they've got, enough worries for each day to try to think about, like, how can I possibly think about having a stronger personal transformation, or being, able to impact anything other than what's in front of me, my shareholder expectations, my employee expectations. Like, how do I get out of my own way? Can you give us some inspiration or some hope, as you're kind of looking to the future? Like, how would we approach transformation
Yeah.
wherever those starting points may be?
Yeah. So, two things. The first one is quite a few of my clients actually have had teenagers. And in each scenario, the teenager had mental health issues, really, you know, bad scenarios, just bad scenarios. I have the recent one, she's in Wales actually. And in a moment of powerful choice and communication, she ended up so I took her back to through a 15-minute transformational thing, and she realized what stopped her in life was being unsure and always second guessing herself. So she made a powerful choice to spend quality time with her teenager and to hear and see and be there with her. And they now have the kind of relationship. And the teenager didn't talk to her, wouldn't acknowledge her, wouldn't do anything. And she now has the relationship. This was 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
The daughter is saying, Mom, I want to go to the mall. Will you go with me? I want to go shopping together. And so to see that drastically change so quick because she made a powerful choice.
Yeah.
And so whatever your powerful choice is, just make it. And I find the theme that goes through all of this is we all want to be connected. So even the lawyers that are trying to do the customer service, imagine if in a moment of who you're being that they feel connected, their whole world's changed. And so, yes, you're doing the billable, but you're also doing that one thing. So the second thing I would say is intention, just speaking your intention and then allowing that to happen, because intention is 100% saying it, and the action piece comes along with that. And I'm going to use this as an example. Years ago, when I did this work, same time you did, people stood up in the class and made intentions. And I said, I'm going to end world hunger. And I just made the declaration, and that was it. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it afterwards. It just was there. My heart was kind of in there, but I didn't seek it out. Right. So years later, what happened was I had an opportunity to work in Somalia. The famine hit in 2013. 14 of us nonprofits were on the ground. We asked the people what they needed. We went back to our governments, and the famine ended in 3 months because we started cash inflow into society. They needed money to buy the food. That's all it was. They didn't need rice that the rats were going to eat. And so in a moment, we transformed the entire world. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was my intention 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then in addition, I became a food policy director for the city of New Haven and worked with 12 other food policy directors in the US and then eventually globally, and getting better food sources and then sourcing restaurant food waste to go to soup kitchens and increasing like good food options for kids in schools. And and in hospitals, in prison, in all of these areas. And so my intention, whether you ever think about it or not, whatever you put the stake in the ground, you CEOs out there, when you have that intention, this is what we're going to do, boom, it's going to happen. So be strong in your intention and watch what happens.
Yeah, that's such a powerful word of encouragement. Well, I want you to imagine that we're sitting here 10 years from now. Like I
Mhm.
asked many of my guests to sort of reflect into the future. And when you think about the capacities for human flourishing and that the human experience will thrive, even in the midst of great uncertainty, great threat, great suffering,
Mhm.
what gives you confidence that we can impact the
Mhm.
human experience?
I believe that we are in a time where people want information and they want to know things, but they also want the connectivity. They want to do life with people that love them, celebrate them, see them, and understand them. And it starts in our families, it starts where we live. And if we even do a pay it forward, just for me, I can imagine if we do a pay it forward, we can completely change the environment. We can change global warming. We can change politics. We can change the love that is out there over the hate that's out there. And then we can impact the world in a huge way. And it really comes down to one person. Me being a stand to end world hunger. I didn't end it, but I made a huge impact just by doing that one thing. So that's what I think.
I love it. Well, I can say from personal experience and that walking back to recognizing like what's the story that I'm telling myself and how it formed. It was an exercise you did with me, and I
Yeah.
think my recognition and why I see the inspiration for having this opportunity to bring thought leaders like yourself to the table is I want people to have that hope. I want them to have that awareness, and I want them to have the courage to declare their intention for change. So, friends, Joy is somebody you need in your life, and I can't wait for us to pick up another conversation with her in the future. And I just wish blessings upon blessings and all the great work that you've done and all the great things that are yet to come. Thanks for being with me today. And I can't wait for our next discussion on our united elevation of the human experience. Thank you, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Mhm.
Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.